Soil is a very significant resource that is often disregarded. Crop yield and productivity is dependent on the quality of soil. Soil has an excellent carbon sequestration capacity. The soils of the world hold more organic carbon than that held by the atmosphere as carbon dioxide and vegetation combine. Despite this importance of soils, degradation in the form of erosion and nutrient depletion continues as a result of unviable agricultural practices and weak implementation of policy measures. At present, 33% of the soils in the world are considered degraded, and around 2 hectares of soils are converted every minute due to rapid urbanization. In the Philippines, agriculture alone contributes about 457 million metric tons per year soil loss. Yet, the risk to livelihoods emanating from land and soil degradation does not receive the attention it deserves. The declaration of the 68th United Nations General Assembly for 2015 as the International Year of Soils is a great opportunity to unify our actions and raise awareness on the significance of soils for food and nutrition security and environmental protection. The key objectives of IYS 2015 are the following: create full awareness of all concerned stakeholders about the fundamental roles of soils for sustaining human life, achieve full recognition of the prominent contributions of soils to food and nutrition security, climate change adaptation and mitigation, essential ecosystem services, poverty alleviation, and sustainable development. Promote effective policies and actions for the sustainable management and protection of soil resources. Sensitize decision makers about the need for robust investment in sustainable soil management activities to ensure healthy soils for different land users and population groups. Advocate rapid enhancement of capacities and systems for soil information collection and monitoring at the local and national levels. Several activities will be carried out by the National IYS Task Force in collaboration with various national government agencies. Local fora will be undertaken for the youth with poster making and related events with the theme Healthy Soils for a Healthy Life, a challenge to the Filipino farm family. International Symposium in December 2015, observance of the World Soil Day on December 5, 2015 as the culminating event of the year-long celebration of the International Year of Soils. There are also activities to be organized by various partners like the Philippine Society on Soil Science and Technology Annual Scientific Conference and the National Organic Agriculture Program 12th National Organic Agriculture Congress. Development of policy and position papers on Philippine soil-related laws and bills is expected, focusing on the National Land Use Policy, Land Use Reclassification, Soil and Water Resources Conservation and Management, and Sustainable Land Management. All these efforts are envisioned to attain enabling policy environment on soil health management and sustainable land management, increased awareness on the importance of soil and its roles to sustain healthy life, impacts of soil land degradation and drought, and proposed actions to be taken. increased advocacies for enhanced capacities and systems for soil information collection and monitoring, increased support in the implementation of soil-related programs from all sectors, and institutional mechanisms to establish Soil Health Alliance. A dedicated web page, logo, and sufficient communication outreach throughout the year will be established. Press conferences by national authorities in connection with key events will be conducted, and communication materials with local examples of good practices and approaches on soil health management will be disseminated. It is envisioned that the series of activities in celebration of the International Year of Soils 2015 will pave the way to unified actions in promoting sustainable soil health management practices and plant the seed for the mainstreaming of sustainable land management in the local and national development plans. Healthy soils for a healthy life.
We overlook it. We walk all over it, trample it every day. Yet we need it, like the air we breathe. It's about time that we talk about soil, and certainly about time that we start protecting it. There can be no life without it. It feeds us, and we are responsible for it. Soil is formed from rocks that are decomposed slowly by the sun, the wind and the rain, by animals and plants. In this way, 10 centimeters of fertile soil are created in 2,000 long years, only 10 centimeters in 2 millennia. Soil that we deplete in only a few years, gone forever. Forests and plants protect the soil. But every year, 13 million hectares of forest are cut down. Fields are cultivated inadequately. Added to that are monocultures and farming on slopes. After the harvest, fields are left naked and unprotected. All this greatly accelerates erosion. And so, gone with the wind, washed away by water. 24 billion tons of fertile soil were lost in 2011 alone. A loss of 3.4 tons per person worldwide, no matter what age. Erosion costs each person $70 per year, a worldwide cost that amounts to $490 billion, an astronomical amount. Our cities are also growing rapidly. Every year in Europe, an area as large as the city of Berlin is transformed into urban areas. Half of these soils are sealed. This is soil from which nothing can grow. But fertile soil is finite and therefore invaluable. Investors and states have realized this. The race for the soils of the world has already begun. Land grabbing, often with questionable means for questionable purposes. Millions of hectares of land change owner every year. The price? Ruined lives, uprooted families. Usually, these are the poorest of the poor. Often they have no choice. They destroy the forest because they need land to survive. We need healthy and fertile soil, now more than ever. Projections say the available arable land per Earth inhabitant will be reduced by half by 2050. But already today, 1 billion people go to bed hungry night after night. That's 1 billion people too many, and this number will increase every day if we do not distribute soil fairly. If we do not increase yields dramatically on every piece of land, or simply discover a second Earth, but we might not want to rely on that option. Soil and land issues rarely get our attention, or that of our policymakers. We see the full supermarket shelves and believe that things will stay like this forever. We live on credit at the expense of soils, but they are not inexhaustible. We take out money from a bank account into which we never make any deposits. One day this account will be empty, our credit overdrawn, and our soils will be gone. But there is good news. We have long known what we must do in order to preserve soils for our children. Let's remember, soil is a sensitive living being who wants to be taken care of. It is not a factory. Everyone has a right to soil. This right must be safeguarded by the law. And we cannot afford to bury our livelihood under a layer of asphalt. Now it's up to us. We must open our eyes and find ways to apply our knowledge, so we don't end up losing the ground under our feet.
The value of soil. Soil is wonderful. Well, of course, we live on it. And if it is fertile, it can produce marvelous things. Fertile soil puts food on our plate. But the number of plates is growing, and more meat ends up on these plates. And part of what we previously put on our plates, we now put into our petrol tanks. This again requires more fertile soil. Productive land is becoming scarce. In 1960, there was still almost half a hectare of farmland for every person on Earth. In 2020, there will be only around a third of that left. Consequently, even unsuitable land is being turned into farmland. No wonder land grabbing is on the rise. Fertile soil is precious, but instead of looking after it, we try to extract the maximum yield from it. But overusing land or cultivating unsuitable land leads to soil degradation. We need healthy soil to produce crops and timber and store and purify water. Soil provides us and our environment with important ecosystem services. Degraded soil makes us vulnerable. Unsustainable land management is sometimes the result of ignorance, and it sometimes results from poverty, where land users have no other choice. Land degradation is driven by things like cutting down forests, overgrazing, monoculture, salination, overuse of fertilizers and chemicals, or farming on sloping ground leading to soil erosion. Not to forget climate change, which alters the drought and rain patterns. But not only does climate change contribute to soil degradation also worsens climate change because degraded soil can store less carbon. But why does all of this matter so much? Well, because it takes 2,000 years to generate about 10 centimeters of topsoil. That is a long time. Soil is a practically non-renewable resource whose overexploitation is costing us dearly. For example, Niger loses approximately 8% of its gross domestic product to overgrazing and excessive salinity in rice paddy fields. Solving these problems through sustainable land management would save 2/3 of this money. Globally, soil degradation is an expensive business. Already it costs every person on Earth $70 each year, which in total is about $490 billion. To this, one needs to add the indirect costs of environmental and humanitarian disasters, such as water shortages, yield shortfalls, or dust storms. The consequence is damage to health, forced migration, famine, and eventually conflict. But how can we prevent this? First of all, it is very difficult to take all these possible consequences into account in planning processes because it is so hard to recognize the true costs of our inaction. With the right figures, we could make the right decisions. We have to include the value of the soiled surfaces and the cost of land degradation into our calculation. Then it becomes obvious that using soils in the way that most of us do today is simply not economically viable in the long run. To solve this problem, we set up the Economics of Land Degradation Initiative, ELD. We want to find out more about these actual costs by bringing together scientists, decision makers in politics and industry, and local land users, and we want to take a global approach. How high are the costs of inaction? What are the potential benefits of adopting sustainable land management practices? What needs to be done? Land degradation has to stop. Knowledge about the costs must be passed on and become part of the decision-making processes. Sustainable land management isn't free, but in the long term it is the much cheaper option. It is the only way to preserve